Okay, in all seriousness, in the last episode, I introduced the topic of propaganda within the social sciences, and I encourage you to go watch the first video if you have not already done so. That way you have a better understanding of what I'm discussing today. Was there anything that surprised you in part 1? Leave me a comment and let me know. Anyways, with that said, let's get to it. The effects of World War II and the Cold War had a sizable impact on the social sciences in what they were allowed to study within the United States. Propaganda was removed as an acceptable field of study, but prior to the study of propaganda being eliminated from the social sciences and then considerably watered down within communication studies, the Institute of Propaganda Analysis did create and disseminate their findings on propaganda within society before the Institute was dismantled. Let's go back in time and visit what the Institute discovered about propaganda. We're going back in time. The Institute was very concerned with the way in which propaganda could impact democracy, where democracy means a system of government or organizations ruled by its eligible members or eligible portion of the population. While members of the Institute knew that propaganda was becoming ever more present in society, there was nothing they could do to stop it. They wanted the public to be able to spot propaganda. They identified 11 propaganda devices to look for, some of which are admittedly pretty harmless. These propaganda devices include selecting an issue, that is, selecting the battle in which to fight in a social competition or conflict. My goal is to corner the alternative facts fizzy-flavored soda water market. Hun, there's a market for everything. Case making, which is using all available tools designed to convince people to accept the narrative of the propagandist. This is essentially a fact or alternative fact gathering mission, preparing for mass broadcasting. I have discovered that facts are bothersome. When people have facts, they become a little bit more social justice-y. Simplification. This may involve creating a slogan. A good slogan removes nuance. There's no room for areas of gray. It's either black or white, good or bad. Name-calling is designed to undermine discussion by giving an idea a negative label so that we reject an idea without looking at the evidence.
Oh, hi. Did you know that Medicare for All is just socialist communism? It'll kill you. Alternative facts will save you from the life of contemplating society's views on morality and how that fluctuates in space and time.
Littering generality is an additional way to undercut discussion and ignore evidence. It does so by associating an idea with a word of virtue. Number 6, transfer, and number 7, testimonial, are used to bring about a change in group loyalties. Transfer involves associating someone or something with something else. This may involve a positive or negative association. Testimonial entails having a respected or despised person state that an idea, product, or person is either good or bad. Both 8, plain folks, and 9, bandwagon, are ways in which the propagandist creates the idea of a community or substantial interest between the propagandist or their ideas and their target audience. Hot potato, do you remember playing that game, Hot Potato? I don't even know what you said, but I don't know. It was like musical chairs, but with a beanbag. Hot potato is the technique of springing an event, a trap, or a situation upon an opponent in order to make them appear to be less credible.
For example, all those who oppose alternative facts fizzy-flavored soda water probably abuse animals.
Lastly, there's stalling, which is a way in which the propagandist delays something in hopes that the opposition will lose momentum. Reading through this, I couldn't help but see similarities between advertising campaigns,
kills all kinds of bugs indoors. Outdoors, Raid House and Garden Bug Killer wipes out insects that attack your flowering plants. Even protects evergreens.
Marketing, public relations, and the items on this extensive list of propaganda techniques. This leads to a serious question posed by some practitioners of these industries of persuasion and ethicists. Is marketing, public relations, and other industries of persuasion little more than propaganda? This question becomes even more important as a push for research into propaganda and related techniques reemerged, after it essentially vanished during early Cold War America. There's about a 30-year gap in the literature, as it was not until the 1980s that we start seeing an appeal for the social sciences to, once again, undertake researching propaganda. Interestingly, not only were the traditional social sciences, psychology and sociology, devoid of propaganda research, communication studies, the discipline that replaced propaganda analysis, was too devoid of published propaganda research. And note the use of the words published research. You see, public relations and marketing firms, as well as governments, have been for decades hiring psychologists and more recently neuroscientists to better tailor their messages for public consumption. From where I'm sitting, this creates a problem. While powerful industries and groups had access to propaganda machines, the public do not have the tools to combat propaganda, let alone identify it. Social psychologists understand that there is a level of bias involved in what information people select and even ignore. They argue that this bias comes from the need to diminish or alleviate any cognitive dissonance that arises from conflicting information, especially when it challenges one's worldview. With an onslaught of information presented on an increasingly regular basis in extremely binary terms, selecting messages one accepts or ignores becomes easy, but also quite necessary. We can only attend to so much information, so we might as well select the information that reinforces our view of the world. In turn, this could create a society that is unable to recognize and accept nuance, becoming increasingly polarized in the worldview. We all say that we understand nuance, but do we really understand nuance? There appears to be differences among people regarding how likely they are to readily accept propaganda and other forms of persuasion. It has nothing to do with the person being gullible.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, "Fool me once, shame on you." If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Studies have discovered that those with low self-esteem are more vulnerable to the wide array of techniques of persuasion than those with high self-esteem. And then my inner monologue goes, does that mean that I am vulnerable to propaganda? Is my worldview solely based on propaganda? Oh my god, I can't believe anything anymore. Okay, breathe. Self-esteem exists along a continuum and changes often within one person for a variety of reasons, in a variety of situations. This had me asking too many questions. Are there truly low or high self-esteem people? Does this mean that our susceptibility changes based on many factors, such as different situations around different people, that these social psychologists maybe haven't considered? How often does this change? Do propagandists attempt to create low self-esteem in their targets to make them more susceptible? I actually don't have any answers to any of these questions. So, is there anything else that can identify someone who is susceptible to propaganda? Well, maybe. Another study discovered that high self-monitors, those who look outside themselves on how to react, were more likely to be persuaded than low self-monitors, those who look to their own beliefs and values before reacting. But there is a problem with both of these findings. They did not focus specifically on propaganda, just persuasive techniques in the broadest sense. Research from media psychology, which I didn't know existed, and communication found that media content, such as videos on YouTube and traditional news, can manipulate and influence behavior, emotions, knowledge, and cognitions. So it stands to reason that propaganda may do the same. This highlights an important thing. Here we see a move away from innate, potentially unchangeable personal characteristics towards external forces. A recent study found that those who were high in authoritarianism, which is a social attitude that involves a willingness to submit to authority, foster an acceptance of violence against those who violate group norms, and conservatism, while under high levels of uncertainty, were more prone to accept propaganda that referred to their in-group. Uncertainty can come about for a variety of reasons, one of which can be economic. Another thing that can cause uncertainty is simply being reminded of one's own mortality. The important thing to note here is that when uncertainty and authoritarianism comes together for a person, the propaganda that is effective is propaganda that promotes ideas that already exist from within that group. These findings fall a bit short for me, because I believe, without evidence admittedly, that we are all susceptible to propaganda. Maybe the unifying factor is that we are all the more susceptible during times of uncertainty. Unfortunately, the researchers were not able to find left-leaning propaganda, so the propaganda leftists find themselves vulnerable to, may be more along the lines of typical advertising, if you consider that a form of propaganda. And I do.
Will our pluggy neuroscientist get her channel back? Will the propaganda machine steamroll her informative videos and in her YouTube channel? Find out in our next episode of Trouble in Propagandizing, or A Propaganda Affair.